my goodness, I just spent all last evening and this morning. They do have a thing on Paxton that's written in the 1800s, and it goes from the earliest of James Paxton was the first Paxton from Berkshire, and it goes through the whole thing up until the 1800s. So very interesting reading about that genealogy and things. So started out in Berwickshire. Then they went to England, and my grandfather says he was English, came from England. So that part of the family, I don't know where in England. Now they had 3 places they settled in England or in Wales. And then they had James Paxton, which was one of the ones that officiated at Charles I's beheading. So then when they did that, then that part of the family moved up to Ireland. And from Ireland, then they came to Pennsylvania. So interesting. I think one of the ones was most interesting. There was one, Paxton, and he was I think it's a lawyer, and then he fought in the military, and unfortunately most of the Paxtons were Confederate. That does not make me happy, but there was one that wrote a book against the slavery. That part I like, but most of them, it looks like overarching amount were for the Confederate. Again, doesn't make me happy to find that out. But the one I'm talking about, he was elected governor. 3 months later, he got married. He got married when he was elected governor, and 3 months later, doesn't say why, they separated. The wife never said why, he never said why, and they said at that point he left and went to live with the Indians. So 3 months marriage, I'm out of here, I'm done, I'm going to go live with the Indians. And we do know there are a number of Paxtons on the Choctaw rolls. So I do have some relatives that are Choctaws I would like to meet. That would be great. But yeah, he left it. So 9 out of 10 he went to live with the Choctaws, because I think it was in Oklahoma or Tennessee where he was at the time, and then he left and said, I'm out of here. Okay. So reading through the genealogy has been really interesting. A lot of them were either ministers, a lot of ministers, and a lot were actually quite a few that were governors and Democrats with the legislature, and so that's interesting as well. Yeah. So just reading through the migration, they came first usually to Pennsylvania area, and my grandfather remained in Pennsylvania. My mother was born in York, and so they just never left that area. But a lot of the Paxtons moved to Virginia, Tennessee, Oklahoma, then Missouri. So it's got the migration of where they went, and and it has a little backstory on a few of them. one of the worst things I saw was one that left a will, and it had part of the will in there, not the whole thing, but he was a slave owner, and he was leaving slaves to his progeny. And the worst thing I saw was just like an unborn slave I'm gifting to one of the unborn children that are going to come. I'm like, what? So that was just really atrocious, to see somebody with that kind of mindset. It was just, so there are things there that are, just sad. One of them, it says they had a failure in love, and so they committed suicide. Another one was, how did they put it? Well, you could tell he died of alcoholism, but I forget what they said, how they said it. But yeah, most of them were pretty upstanding, in some ways. But like I said, a lot of them fought for the Confederacy, and that's just, that's horrible to hear, that you have a lineage that so many of them were caught up in that. So I'm going to have to watch the movie Cromwell today, and see, what it was. They executed Charles first because of treason, and I think they first, started having the kind of an insurrection, and then they called, I guess James Paxton and things got involved. Some of the Scottish got involved with it down the way, and so I just want to see what all that was about. I understand he was a Protestant king. Most Paxtons were Protestants, and he married a Catholic. And that was kind of, started making changes, and they thought it was too close to Catholicism, some of the changes he was wanting to make, and the fact that, the king is above the law, and I guess they weren't having that, and so they tried him for treason and executed him. So, I don't know the whole thing with that, so I want to watch the movie Cromwell and find out exactly what all was going. But he seemed like he was, a loving father, a loving, he loved his wife, he loved his children. So again, another sad situation. Politics, what do you got? Politics are just... When you see politics, it usually does not end well. So yeah, we'll have to see. I understand Paxton's originally came from Saxon area, and and then over to Scotland, and were again settled in the Berwickshire area, which is right on it's the borderland, right by the Tweed River that separates England and Scotland. So they were very, right on the border, and they kind of went back and forth. That area was English for a time, Scottish for a time. It just kept changing because it's right there, right on that borderland. So, maybe that's why my grandfather said English, he's English, but, yeah. So anyway, I'm digging into the genealogy. Interesting stuff. Now, I did have the genealogy book for the Paxtons. It was that big. Literally, it was that big. This one is a little smaller. You can get it on Amazon, and it's a smaller thing than this great big huge volume that I had. But yeah, all the Paxtons are related. We all go back to James. I think it was James Paxton, is where everybody came from. So yeah, prolific. Anyway, something of interest to do and look into. Yeah, I just wish I could find out exactly where my grandfather, if if his father came over, when did they actually arrive? But it's really hard because my grandfather's name is John Paxton, and there are a ton of John Paxtons. So trying to follow it back, I got stymied, and yeah, I get stymied with him, and I can't go back any further. I can't find any information on his father's name or his mother's name or anything. So I just get stuck with my grandfather, and there's nobody there that I know in a family that I can talk to, that would know any information. So, dig as I may, I'm kind of stymied. Anyway, we'll see. We'll see. Not that it really matters, but it would be kind of fun to go to the part of England where, my grandfather, either he came from or his father came from. I don't know how many generations. Now, when I go back and look at the things, I see that he lived with a family, and I think he had a brother, if I remember right. He had a brother, and he worked for a lumber mill for some time, and but it's really difficult to find too much back there about him. He was married to Grace, my mother's mother, but she died when my mother was really young, and then had my mother and her sister, and then he got remarried to another woman, and basically my mother had to raise the children and stuff, and so but that's about all I know. I can't, I've only got to see my relatives on either side once or twice in my life. So it's, and there was really no communication with anyone, so I really got nothing to go on. Kind of beating my head against the wall with trying to figure out the genealogy and stuff. Mercy. And when they get to the ones that came, to Pennsylvania, it was like really the early days, and they don't get into the full, genealogy that stayed in that area. So yeah, a little difficult. And I'm not by any means good in that search, I don't know really how to do the full search for the genealogy, but it's interesting. I just think it would be fun to find out what part of England. Now, I understand there are 3 areas in England that they went to. So which of the 3 it is, I'm not sure. I don't know. Okay. England and Wales. But I think if they had gone to Wales, he would have said he's Welsh. But he says he's English. He said he was English. So anyway, I'm going to continue to try to look at a little research just out of, curiosity, and see if I can find any more information, because I just think it would really be fun to visit that part of England where they came from and see, what it's like there. Although, let's face it, it's changed from, 1600s to now, Oh my goodness. So on that note, I'm going to leave this here and I'll see you online.